We're now going to take a look at Carol Rumens' poem, The Émigrée, which in itself means a female who was forced to leave her home for a political reason. So it deals with conflict, but not in the conventional sense of war. Although that is not to say this narrator in the poem hasn't been touched by the effect of war. And despite the fact that Rumens is British and hasn't had to deal with a transient a movement in life herself, the poem deals with the account a female has of her hometown, city and country that has been ravaged by war. Yet despite this, she has an unwavering loyalty to her country and only sees it for the beauty that is lodged within her memory. Because of that, the poem opens in a very positive way. And even though in the first stanza there is a reference to the war-torn land, which is now might be at war, and it may be sick with tyrants, there is that positivity that springs through. We begin with the line, "There was once a country," which reminds the reader that this is a story, it's a narrator's account of a life she once lived. The fact that it has a very fairy tale tone could imply to the reader that she seeks comfort, much like a fairy tale, in remembering what her life was like in her homeland despite the war. "I left as a child, but my memory is sunlight clear." The reference to the memory being sunlight clear, the adjective sunlight clear, is again another reminder of the positivity, again a reminder of how happy she was in her homeland, a land that she was forced to move from. She said that "I am told that November, a metaphor for the end of the year, darkness comes to every city." Maybe that's a political statement. Does every country have to suffer war? Is it an inevitable part of our life? But she refers to that even with the worst news I receive of it cannot break my original view. And she talks about the original view, the narrator, about it being bright, filled paperweight. Now, if you think about the metaphor of paperweight, bright is self-explanatory, there is a positivity there. But the filled paperweight is a metaphor. And it could enforce the idea that her country gave her a solid start in life. It kept her grounded. And because of that, much like a paperweight, there is a solid, fixed view of the place she called home. And because of that, the verb branded, I am branded with an impression of sunlight. That will not go. That will always be there, regardless of what happens. As we move into stanza 2, the language then continues to show this sense of positivity. She talks about streets and graceful slopes. She talks about white streets, that glow, the verb glow and the adjective white, again, remind us of almost a heavenly place. A fantasy place, which for her brings her real comfort. As stanza 2 progresses, we get a sense of threat. She talks about having to leave a vocabulary as hollow as a doll. She talks about a language that has been banned by a state. Which state, we do not know. Why it's being banned again, we do not know. It's ambiguous. But what we do know is there's a sense of defiance, and that language means a lot to her. And she says that she cannot get it off her tongue. She cannot stop speaking it. It tastes of sunlight. And this is quite a strange image, it tastes of sunlight. But it's a reminder of the fact that language is part of who you are. And for her, the language she speaks enables her to be the person she is. And again, give her life, hope and positivity. There is then a sense of hopelessness as we begin the third stanza. And she talks about having no passport and there is no way back at all. She's almost resolute to the idea that wherever she is now, that's her new home and she needs to stay. But still, my country city comes to me in its own white plain. This city is now personified. It makes its way to her in this memory that she has. She talks about, it takes me dancing through the city of walls. The verb dancing implying that there is a freeness that comes with the memory of her home. However, we then get threat. And suddenly there is a change, and the language of light and positivity changes to a language of conflict. They accuse me. They circle me. They accuse me of being dark. The pronoun they is causes the reader to consider that she is being forced to feel a certain way. The they is unnamed, maybe because they're too horrific to name. But they cause her threat. They circle her. She's trapped, almost, in her new home. Still, as the closing of the poem, we're taken back to the positivity she felt, and she talks about shadows that now fall as evidence of sunlight. The idea that regardless of what happens to her, regardless of how she's expected to behave in the land she is now, she will never lose that essence of who she is because her homeland gave her that. When we think a little bit more about structure, in the opening 2 stanzas, we talked about this increasing sense of comfort that the memory brings. And because of that, Rumens relies on enjambment to show that she is happy to talk about it. She is unrelenting in her positive view. She wants to keep mentioning what it brings to her. But as we move towards stanza 3, where the threat comes from the they, there is now more end stopping, more use of a full stop. Arguably, that is because the new city that she's in, there is a sense of confinement. She feels that she has to stop being who she is. She is stopped from experiencing the life she would prefer to in her homeland.